Hello everyone, hope you're happy and healthy. Welcome back to episode number 4 of Home of the Braves, the series where I try to take the Atlanta Braves into the postseason and potentially win a World Series title. As you can see where we left off in our last episode, we've clawed our way back. We're now 29-34, we're still 5 games under 500, which is very disappointing, still almost 11 games back from the division, still in 4th place. So not a lot of good news, but we have managed to at least claw our way towards 500. And as you can see in the NL wild card, we are way down the list, but with a little bit of luck, maybe we can squeak out a couple wins. We're still basically like 8 games out of a wild card. We are exactly 8 games back of a wild card spot. San Diego Padres, the team that's currently occupying that space. And if we go into our pitching staff, Cole Hamels is back and he's pitching really well, so that is, well, I mean, he's only pitched 1 game, but he pitched very well in that game, so that's encouraging. He did get a little bit of game time down in Gwinnett in AAA to rehab. Chris Archer's come in, he's been pretty good, and as you can see here, we made a big trade in the last episode, picking up the one and only Arnoldus Chapman, and as you can see here in the injured list, yeah, I got out of the park. Basically, there's no other way to put it. He tore his UCL 3 games into his season with me. Well, 2 games, I should say. And that's all we really need to say about that. Today is the first-year player draft, so I'm going to show you basically what you can do to find some good draft picks if you're lucky enough. As you've maybe seen in my tutorial video, I normally have draft picks basically all over the shop. Obviously in this playthrough I am just playing on standard rules, which means you're not allowed to trade draft picks, so I just have a standard amount of picks. Obviously we have our regular round 1 and then supplemental draft rounds, and after that it is time to negotiate the contracts with the young draft picks, and then from there you can do whatever you want with them to develop their skills. And I'm going to show you a way that I keep track of my draft picks by creating a short list. So what we're going to do is just auto draft until the next pick that we make. And as you can see here, there's basically only one player who is, in our opinion, draft worthy, which is the first baseman, Michael Brown. He is the top rated player with the OSA, which is the Central Scouting, the OOTP Scouting Association, which is Central Scouting, and then Dana Brown, who's our scout. And they both have Michael Brown, the first baseman out of Vacaville, California, as the only player that's worth drafting. He's out of high school, so he's miles away from being ready for the MLB, but I'm going to go ahead and draft him in the first round of the draft. He is a potential home run hitter, basically. That's his big strength. I don't have any first base prospects, so that kind of works out for me. So basically what you're looking for when you're drafting players is a number of things. You want positional strength, you want the highest potential that you can get, you want to be able to sign players for a reasonable amount of money, you want your own scouting accuracy to be high, and you also want to cross-reference your scouting department with the OOTP Scouting Association, the Central Scouting. So let's just use one of these guys as an example. Obviously starting pitchers, very valuable in the draft, and there's only a handful that are actually quote-unquote serviceable. All of these guys, these top 3 starting pitchers, are out of high school. So if we click on one here, this guy's got a nasty curveball developing, pretty decent fastball, maybe a okay changeup. So if you look, and I mean, you just use your brain here, 3-pitch pitcher, he's got only 92, maybe 94 mile per hour fastball. This guy in all likelihood is going to be a bullpen pitcher. So right now he's strictly bullpen. In the future they predict maybe a starter, but this is a player that probably ends up being a relief pitcher for you. So you can compare his stats with the OSA stats. I mean, if his changeup develops to 62 out of 100, maybe then he's a starting pitcher, but I mean, a 3-pitch makeup is usually not enough to be a starting pitcher in the MLB. Another 3-pitch makeup pitcher, and then Kyle Harrison. So all 3 of these guys, 3-pitch makeup. I'm not sold on any of them being a starting pitching option in the future, although it's possible. It's not out of the question. the nice part about someone like Kyle Harrison is his demand is just slot, so that's low. That just means whatever round he'd be drafted in, he would just be sort of given the money that you would normally give a drafted player in that round, because each round has sort of a slot. If you go down to negotiate with draftees, when you negotiate, you kind of have like a scouting budget and a negotiating budget. The slot is just what the average player would want. So like the slot would here is like 3.1 in the first round, in the second round it's much lower, etc., etc. Okay, let's go. Let's see what they have for batters. And we want, what do we want here? We want our scouting director. So when you're drafting players, obviously there are positions of strength. So for instance, like what I've found in a lot of other OOTPs, I don't know if it's the same honestly in OOTP 21, but it could be, and likely is that there are certain positions that are harder to develop players in. So like catcher, to get a high quality catcher can sometimes be difficult. High quality shortstop in particular, very difficult to draft and develop shortstops. And center field. So basically catcher, shortstop, center field, and then obviously starting pitcher. Those are the positions you want to focus in a draft. They're tough to develop, so the more that you draft and develop and sign in the offseason, the more likelihood that one of them will make it. B, you want to make sure that if you have a lot of positional depth, you can now create a prospect that you can trade for another player. Maybe when you're making a push, you can trade a high value prospect in order to get a better return on a team controlled contract on a young star that you need maybe as your final addition as you're making a push towards the World Series, something like that, right? So obviously a player in the shortstop position more valuable for other teams, therefore they are more willing to look at the player and potentially take him as a higher value even if his potential is lower, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Other positions like first base, third base, they have a little more flexibility and they can be developed into other positions. So like first base, normally someone that plays first or third, those positions can be interchanged. The same with the right field and left field, you can interchange them with each other. And so a lot of the times when you draft in that position, it's because the player is exceptional, not because he's just the highest ranked. So like for instance, if we saw the top player as a 52 or a 50, but he was a left field or right field, it's like, okay, what's the next position available? First base or catcher, shortstop, center field, something like that. I'm probably going to take the next rating down because that position might have a little bit less depth in it. I hope this is all making sense. If you understand baseball, this is all very intuitive, and you understand management, this is probably intuitive. But for those of you that are new to the game and this all seems very overwhelming and you're not exactly sure on how to approach the draft, this is just my opinion. The jury, I think, is sort of split on whether you just draft the best player. I've seen it all over the internet. Just draft the best player available. He will develop the best, etc., etc. And that does happen, but you have to factor in that they could get injured, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and likely draft Josh Moylan. I just did draft a first baseman, so sometimes catcher is a tough position to fill out in your minor league system. Let's just see here if the OOTPs, who does they have? Mac Gassett, who is a catcher. What's my scout rating at? 47, that's not bad. Alex Boychuk, 44. So I might go with Gassett here. The thing is that his demand is quite high. It's not unreasonable, it is just quite high. Home run power. It's very rare that a catcher has this much home run power, but I being a capped potential 40 is quite low. Same with avoiding strikeouts, but it does look like he's a home run hitter. The same thing with Alex Boychuk. Always leading with extra effort with guidance from coaches. So this guy, judging by his personality, could become a home run hitter that works hard. That's good to see. A lot of catchers in the top part of the draft, which is also interesting. Shortstop, that's sometimes a tough position to fill. You can also play third. High contact potential. A little bit low on the eye. I'm not sure how much eye and discipline really matters, especially as the game sort of moves forward. Sometimes in some years that really matters. You have a high strikeout percentage, it's not good. in some OOTPs. In other years, it seems to be kind of more irrelevant as a stat, as a reference point. So here's someone, this guy gets a lot of walks and base hits just from looking at his stats. Let's see if that holds true. 67 hits in 263 plate appearances. What's his walk rate? 28. That's quite good, right? So on base percentage of almost 400. You know, as a shortstop, that's basically what you're looking for, someone with speed, and he does have decent speed, right? So I mean, that's what you're looking for, top of the lineup, someone that's going to get on base and then potentially steal for you. Now let's just take a look here. That guy doesn't look very promising with the, what was I looking at here, with my scouting again. So we potentially sign this guy. You know what, I think I'm going to go with Matt Cassette because he's rated highest of all batters, all position players by the OSA, and my scout also rates him as the second highest player on the list. So I'm going to draft Cassette like so, and we'll skip ahead to the next round. And let's see what starters are left. There are still a couple of starters. Let's see here. Kyle Harrison is rated quite highly. Where's Tyler Floyd? There he is. Okay. I think that I might go with Tyler Floyd. He's intelligent and well-spoken, got a nasty curveball developing, decent fastball. He's probably going to be a bullpen, you know, maybe even an above-average bullpen pitcher. I don't think he'll ever become a starter in the MLB, but you never know. Starting pitchers do have good trade value, so we'll pick him up here. Who did I just say? Tyler Floyd, right? Yes, draft player. And we'll skip ahead to the next pick. Still a couple of decent starting pitchers remaining, but not according to my scout, my head scout. Josh Moylan still available, as well as Kevin Kendall. Okay speed. He's got decent eye, you know, 350 on base percentage. Can play a couple of positions. That's always useful. He's out of high school. Wait, is he? It said he was at UCLA. Yeah, so he's a junior, college junior, but he is very easy to sign. Third baseman, Gage Workman, with 11 home runs, 380 on base percentage. Let's see. Okay, there's some potential there. Not great contact and gap. Like, if you only end up with 40 contact, you're probably never going to play in the MLB. So, Oviedo, same thing. A little bit worrying with his contact and his eye. Taylor Smith. Okay, let's go. Let's see if we can find someone near the top here with decent contact. So I think it's either going to be Kevin Kendall or Josh Moylan. And I'm so worried about this guy's contact. I mean, he had a 409 average in high school, which is, he's just not really strong in the field, which is worrying. I'm gonna go with this guy, Kevin Kendall, shortstop. Usually can't go wrong. Maybe he doesn't make it, but we picked him up in the 4th round anyways. Josh Moylan still available. I'm tempted to take him. Highland Hall is an option, but I'm going to go with Josh Moylan. You never know. I picked him up in the 5th round. He was kind of highly touted by my scout for a long period of time. So, and then I'll pick up Highland Hall here, and then the rest of the time, so as soon as I get down to about 40 potential, I then switch to starting pitcher and just basically load up on starting pitchers. And the reason is because you can always convert starting pitchers, and they might have a 41 potential as a starting pitcher. And then it comes down to you can switch them when it gets towards the end of their development as a minor league pitcher, and you switch them to a relief pitcher, and all of a sudden they're like a 60 or 70. So that's the reason I draft starting pitchers over relief pitchers. If we look at all pitchers here, most of them are starting pitchers anyways. So let's go into the starter here, and we'll pick up Connor Angel out of Monroe, and we'll skip ahead, And then it's just like that. Like I'll just go down the list here and I'll try to, I don't know what Angel was, I wasn't actually looking, but I try to sign pitchers that have very easy or normal signability. I look for left-handed starters normally, you know, just good to fill out your minor leagues with left-handed starting pitchers because they're harder to come by, obviously. So I sometimes also look for height. If someone's 6'8", I think I just drafted one that was like 6'8" or 6'9". It's like, you know, they just tend to make it. They just tend to have a little bit more of a chance to make it. So that's the reason, that's sort of the order of things that I look through as I'm drafting in the first year player draft. So we'll just finish up here with the drafting of players as I get through the rounds. It's obviously round 12, you know, 35 rounds total. I'm only in round 12. I do get asked from time to time, do you finish the entire draft or you just auto draft? It gets to a point where I auto draft, but I mean the problem with auto drafting a lot of the time is that you end up drafting players that have extremely hard signability like the AI does, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, you end up with 10 players that you don't end up actually signing because the AI has drafted players with very hard or impossible draft eligibility. So wow, look at this. This guy is Canadian and French with a second nationality, and he's going to North Carolina State. And he's a college senior from Candiac, Quebec. Matthew Gauthier. Let's sign him. Okay guys, I'll get towards the end of the draft and I'll see you on the other side of it. Okay, once you've finished off your first year player draft, I then go into the draft log and I go through the rounds, putting players into a short list. So every player that I've drafted, all I do is shortlist them, create a new short list. I name it drafted. Okay. And just like that, I'll go through each of my picks and just add them to the drafted shortlist. It's a bit annoying because it sort of flicks you onto future rounds on every pick, but usually it's just like the first 10 rounds or something like that. And by doing this, I get an idea of how my players are developing. So when I just check through the shortlist like once or twice a season, all I do, I've just put him in there, all I do is just check the drafted shortlist and I can get an idea of, okay, this player is playing in single A or high A or in the, you know, on my AAA team, or maybe they never made it out of rookie league, and then it gives me an idea of who I should resign, how they're developing, where's my pick, and essentially all I'm doing by adding these players to the shortlist is just giving myself easy access to the players that I've drafted, because you do want to make sure that your draft and development is one of the strong points of your club. And the reality is, even though the game will kind of do this for you, it's always better to manually do it yourself, and that sort of just is a stopgap so that you ensure your players are being looked after and in the right spot, especially if you set your team to basically manually move the minor league players around, and just like that. So I've added my top 10 draft picks to the shortlist, and then I just go ahead and negotiate with them. So if they only demand $850, definitely to meet demand and submit it. Matt Cassette, okay, he actually demands more than the slot, but because I'm not actually spending a lot of money on draft picks this year, I'm going to meet the demand. As you can see, I have 19 million left for signing bonuses. I'm definitely not going to hit that with these players. Submit that. Third round, Ty Floyd, he's asking for way more than his slot, but again, it's okay. I've got 18 million in draft budget, so I'll definitely be signing him, and then the rest are under. If I was to be in a position where there's maybe 7 or 8 players in the first few rounds that I needed to sign, I would have to maybe look at the demand, look at my slot, basically how much I can afford in each round, and then make some more management decisions on who I'm taking, who I'm potentially getting rid of or not signing, or maybe submitting a lower offer to, and basically just going off of where my budget is. I always do try to keep my budget high for the draft picks, and I'll show you where to do that just in front office, and then your development budget, and typically that includes your prospect development as well as your draft budget, as you can see up here. Scouting budget is how you sort of see where your scouting accuracy improves basically on draft day. Okay, so that's basically how you set up your draft and draft effectively in Out of the Park Baseball 21. I know it's a little bit, well, it's daunting. If you haven't played the game before, or if you are playing and are sort of unsure, it's taken me forever to really learn how to do this. And even my methods are, I would just say, average. Like, I do tend to draft quite well, but that's usually because, like I said in my tutorial video of how to do this game on a macro scale and set up your team to win year after year, I usually turn draft pick trading on. And the reality is, in the MLB, there is no draft pick trading, so that is an unrealistic or like cheating way to find your team success year after year. But drafting is just so important, and the way that I've done it has sort of set myself up for future seasons, but to be honest, it's a crapshoot. A lot of players, like I said, can get injured or face development issues, or maybe, you know, don't quite pan out as well as they were predicted to, and as a result, I mean, they just don't make the MLB. And when you look up and down your negotiation and your top rated player is only a 55 potential, and then you look at the players that are on your lineup, like 55 potential is only moderately better than a couple of the players that I've already got. So if they max out and actually hit that 55 potential, which I find is very rare, they're only going to be a middle player on your MLB roster. Or they could, you know, have a potential of 80 and still bat 245, or a potential of 80 and bat 223. You never know. That could happen too. Okay guys, thanks very much for watching today's episode of how to draft effectively in Out of the Park Baseball 21. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you have any other suggestions, I'd love to hear them. I would love to be able to draft top players in every single draft. I know that's unrealistic. I mean, unless you want to lose your first few seasons, basically tank for the first couple draft picks each year that you start off with, and then go on to win in future seasons. I think the Braves already did that, and that's how they sort of got Ozzie Albies as well as Ronald Acuna Jr., you know, high rated prospects. So I mean, that's basically the long and short of how to draft in Out of the Park Baseball 21. Guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe to catch more Out of the Park Baseball content, and make sure you like the video if you've stuck around this far. Okay guys, thanks very much for watching, and take care.